The colored pencil snapped. Maya flinched, eyes darting to the door, then back to the drawing of the shadowed man by the medicine cart. Not sadness, fear. What terror haunted this sick child? Michael Jordan felt the subtle shift in the room's energy, a discordant note beneath the carefully cultivated cheerfulness of the pediatric oncology wing at Chicago Mercy Hospital. He was here for one of his regular, usually unpublicized visits to the wing his foundation heavily supported, aiming to bring a few smiles, offer some encouragement, a brief distraction from the relentless cycle of treatments and uncertainty these young warriors faced. The staff greeted him with practiced warmth, the familiar mixture of gratitude and slight awe. Most of the children reacted with wide-eyed excitement, thrilled by the unexpected appearance of the basketball legend, eager for autographs, photos, a moment of connection with their hero. He moved easily among them, his towering frame softened by a genuine warmth, asking about their favorite cartoons, challenging them to imaginary free-throw contests, sharing stories from his playing days adapted for young ears. It was work he found deeply rewarding, a grounding counterpoint to the pressures of his business empire, but his attention kept being pulled back to her. Maya, a girl maybe 10, perhaps 11 years old, seated at a small table in a quieter corner of the brightly decorated playroom, seemingly oblivious to the celebrity buzz filling the ward. Her concentration was absolute, focused entirely on the sketchpad open before her small hand gripping a colored pencil with surprising intensity. Unlike the other children who clamored for his attention, Maya hadn't even looked up when he entered. She remained hunched over her drawing, her thin shoulders tense beneath the standard-issue hospital gown, a curtain of dark braids partially obscuring her face. There was an aura around her, an invisible barrier of fierce concentration that discouraged interruption. Nurse Ramirez, a kind, sharp-eyed woman who ran the ward with compassionate efficiency, followed Jordan's gaze. "Ah, Maya," she murmured, her voice soft. "She's one of our long-termers. Leukemia. Tough course of treatment, but she's a fighter. Very quiet, though. Keeps to herself, mostly. Lives in her drawings." Ramirez sighed softly. "Her mom works double shifts, trying to keep things afloat. Visits every chance she gets, but, well, Maya spends a lot of time alone. The art therapy helps, we think. Quiet. Keeps to herself." That much was obvious, but Jordan sensed something more than simple introversion or the understandable withdrawal that often accompanied serious illness. There was a tension in Maya's posture, a hyper-focus, that felt less like creative absorption and more like vigilance. Her eyes, when she occasionally flickered her gaze up from the page, not towards him but towards the hallway door, or when a particular orderly passed by, held a depth of something that wasn't just the weariness of illness. It looked like fear, real gut-wrenching fear. He watched as she drew, her pencil strokes quick, almost frantic at times. The images taking shape weren't the typical flowers or cartoon characters he saw on other children's artwork scattered around. The playroom, hers were darker, more complex. Shadowy figures lurking in corners. Distorted faces peering through windows. Small animals trapped in cages. There was undeniable artistic talent there, but channeled into depicting unease, confinement, threat. Jordan felt a growing disquiet. He'd seen fear in the eyes of opponents on the court, in business rivals across a boardroom table. This felt different, more profound, more helpless. He made his way over to her table, moving slowly, casually, not wanting to startle her. "Hey there," he began gently, crouching slightly to bring himself closer to her level. "That's some serious artwork you're doing. Mind if I take a look?" Maya jumped, her pencil clattering onto the table. Her head snapped up, eyes wide, dilated with instant panic. She instinctively covered her sketchpad with her arms, shielding it from view. Seeing who it was seemed to confuse her more than reassure her. The fear didn't lessen, but it mingled now with bewilderment. It's nothing, sir," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. She wouldn't meet his eyes, her gaze fixed somewhere near his knee. "Looks like more than nothing to me," Jordan said softly, keeping his tone calm, non-threatening. "You've got real talent. Those shadows, you really capture a feeling there." He wasn't just offering empty praise. He was trying to signal that he saw something in the drawings, something beyond just lines on paper. He hoped to create an opening, a tiny crack in the wall she had built around herself. For a fleeting second, her eyes darted up, meeting his, and in that instant, he saw it clearly. Not just fear, but a silent, desperate plea. An urgent message trapped behind her terrified silence. It was a look that bypassed the celebrity, the basketball icon, and spoke directly to the human being, the parent, the protector in him. It screamed, "Help me," even as her lips remained tightly sealed. Then, just as quickly, the shield slammed back down. She ducked her head, pulling the sketchpad closer, retreating back into her protective shell. "It's just drawing," she mumbled, turning slightly away, a clear dismissal. Jordan understood. Pushing further would only frighten her more. He respected her boundary, but the image of that silent plea burned itself into his mind. He offered a gentle smile. "Well, keep it up. You're good." He straightened up, giving her space, but his internal radar was now on high alert. Something was terribly wrong here, something beyond the already difficult battle Maya was fighting against leukemia. He continued his rounds, talking with other children, signing autographs, but his thoughts kept returning to Maya, to her haunted eyes, her disturbing drawings, her palpable fear. He started paying closer attention to the ward's dynamics, the interactions between staff and patients, searching for any clue, any anomaly that might explain Maya's terror. He noticed Mr. Davies, one of the evening shift orderlies, a large man, with a forced smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Davies moved through the ward with efficient but somehow unsettling calmness. Jordan observed him interacting briefly with Maya later that afternoon, delivering a fresh water pitcher to her bedside table near her quiet corner. Maya visibly tensed as Davies approached, shrinking back slightly, her eyes fixed on her lap, refusing to acknowledge him. Davies said something low, inaudible to Jordan across the room, ruffled Maya's hair in a gesture that seemed overly familiar, almost proprietary, then moved on. After Davies left the immediate vicinity, Maya's breathing seemed shallow, ragged. She immediately picked up her pencil and began sketching with renewed, almost frantic intensity. This interaction, Maya's specific fear reaction directed at Davies, felt significant. It narrowed the focus. Later, Norris found Nurse Ramirez preparing medications at the nurse's station. "Nurse," he began casually, "Maya seems particularly quiet today. And a little jumpy? Especially when Mr. Davies came by earlier." Ramirez frowned, pausing in her task. "Davies?" She lowered her voice. "He's efficient enough, I suppose. Been here about 6 months. But—" She hesitated, clearly reluctant to speak ill of a colleague. "He gives me an odd feeling sometimes. A bit too smooth, maybe? And yes, I've noticed Maya seems wary of him, more than the other kids. Chalked it up to her general shyness, maybe him being a bigger guy." She trailed off, clearly having harbored her own subtle unease. "Have there been any issues?" Jordan pressed gently. "Any concerns at all?" Ramirez glanced around, ensuring privacy. "Nothing concrete," she admitted reluctantly. "But there have been some minor discrepancies lately, in the narcotics counts. Small amounts, easily attributed to charting errors or minor spillage, especially on busy shifts like evenings, when Davies is off and on." She shook her head. "Management looked into it briefly. Couldn't pinpoint anything definitive. Not enough to formally accuse anyone. But it makes you wonder. Discrepancies in narcotics counts. Davies working evenings. Maya's specific fear of him." The pieces began to form a disturbing potential pattern. Could Davies be diverting drugs? And could Maya have somehow witnessed something that made her terrified of the orderly? This possibility shifted the entire dynamic. Maya wasn't just scared, she might be an unwilling witness, silenced by fear or direct threats. The drawings weren't just expressions of general anxiety. They might be her only way of trying to communicate a specific, dangerous secret. This realization was the midpoint twist. It reframed Maya's silence, her fear, her art. It wasn't just about her illness. It was potentially about a crime happening. Right under the hospital's nose, with Maya trapped in the middle. Jordan felt a surge of protective anger. He needed confirmation. He needed to understand what Maya was trying to convey through her sketches. He waited for an opportunity, finding Maya alone again in her corner later, just before visiting hours ended. He approached cautiously, kneeling beside her chair again. "Maya," he said softly, keeping his voice calm, "I know you're scared, but sometimes drawings can tell stories, words can't. And he gestured towards her sketchpad. Sometimes they show things people need to see." Maya looked up, her eyes wide, filled with conflict. She clutched the notebook tighter. "I was looking at your earlier drawing," Jordan continued gently. "The one with the shadowed man near the medicine cart." He paused, watching her reaction. "He had something on his hand, didn't he? Like a tattoo?" Maya's breath hitched. Her eyes darted towards the hallway, then back to Jordan, fear warring with a desperate need to communicate. Jordan recalled his brief glimpse of Davy's arm earlier when the orderly had reached across a table. Had there been a tattoo? He dredged his memory. Yes. Something small, dark, on the wrist. Maybe a scorpion? Was it? Jordan asked very quietly, very specifically. Like a scorpion? Maya gasped, a tiny choked sound. Her eyes locked on his, filled with sheer terror, but also, undeniably, confirmation. She gave the smallest, almost imperceptible nod, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. The scorpion tattoo. That was the key, the recurring symbol in her drawings of the shadowed man. It wasn't just a random scary figure. It was him, Davies, and the drawings likely depicted what she had seen him doing. Jordan felt a cold certainty settle over him. Maya had witnessed Davies stealing medication, likely narcotics, from the supply carts. Davies had seen her witness it, and he had threatened her into silence. Her drawings were her desperate, coded cry for help, hoping someone, anyone, would understand the symbols, recognize the threat she couldn't voice aloud. He knew he had to act, quickly and decisively, but also carefully, protecting Maya above all else. He couldn't rely solely on the drawings or Maya's terrified nonverbal confirmation. He needed proof. He discreetly contacted Andre, his trusted head of security, explaining the situation in low tones over the phone. The suspected drug diversion, the potential witness, a child, the specific suspect, Davies, the need for immediate but subtle surveillance. Andre, understanding the gravity and the need for discretion, immediately set things in motion, contacting hospital security leadership directly, bypassing lower channels, relaying the sensitive information attributed to a highly credible anonymous source, Jordan himself. They arranged for immediate covert monitoring of hospital security cameras covering the medication rooms and supply carts on Maya's wing, focusing particularly on Davy's movements during his current shift. Simultaneously, Jordan returned to Maya's side. He didn't press her further. He simply sat quietly nearby, offering a silent, reassuring presence. He pulled out his own phone, casually sketching on a drawing app, simple basketballs, sneakers. Then he drew a small, very clear scorpion. He held the phone so Maya could see it subtly. He then looked pointedly at the drawing, then back at her, raising his eyebrows slightly in a silent question. "This guy?" Maya watched him, her eyes wide. After a long, tense moment, She took her own pencil. On a clean sheet of paper, she didn't draw the scorpion. Instead, she drew a small trembling figure, herself, pointing towards the drawing of the scorpion, and then drew a large emphatic X through it. Then she looked directly at Jordan, her expression conveying not just fear, but urgent agreement. Yes, him. Stop him. Just then, Jordan's phone vibrated silently. A text from Andre. Got him. Clean catch. Medroom camera feed. Apprehending now. Relief washed over Jordan, immense and profound. He gave Maya a slow, almost imperceptible nod, a silent message. It's okay now. You're safe. A few minutes later, two uniformed hospital security officers, accompanied by a plainclothes supervisor, walked calmly but purposefully down the hallway towards the medication room. Shortly after, they emerged escorting a stunned, protesting Mr. Davies, his hands cuffed behind his back. Maya watched them pass from her corner, her body, still tense, but the abject terror in her eyes began to recede, replaced by dawning disbelief, then overwhelming relief. As Davies was led away out of sight, Maya finally lowered her sketchpad. She looked across the room at Jordan, who offered her a warm, reassuring smile. Tears welled up in her eyes again, but this time they weren't tears of fear or sadness. She took a deep, shaky breath and whispered, her voice barely audible but clear across the now quiet playroom. Thank you, E. It was more than just gratitude. It was the sound of a terrible silence finally being broken. The hidden truth, communicated through coded drawings and a silent plea in a child's eyes, had been understood. The threat was neutralized. The healing, both physical and emotional, could now truly begin, thanks to the willingness of one observer to look beyond the surface and decipher a message hidden in plain sight. How can we become more attuned to nonverbal cues and coded messages, especially from children or vulnerable individuals who may be unable or afraid to speak their truth directly? What responsibility do we have to act when we witness subtle signs of distress or potential danger, even when the situation seems ambiguous? Share your insights in the comments and subscribe for more stories about the power of observation and the courage to intervene.